game begin?
Hello and welcome back to the Spike Colony, your home for no nostalgia, no nonsense content. I have no memory of playing Magic from my childhood that gets evoked at all when I get dreadnoughted and replenished out of a game, just obliterated while I'm sitting here trying to put +1/+1 counters on my good, honest Quirion Dryad. Mystic Enforcer was not even in my deck in 2003 Legacy. I did not bother with such things.
Did you not afford that one? That one was a rare.
Well, I missed the boat on it being legal and standard, but it never occurred to me that I could play it in a deck until 2025, in which any deck that can produce green mana or white mana,
and any deck that can produce blue mana
and has seven cards in hand,
Mystic Enforcer
should have Mystic Enforcer. On a scale of cap to no cap, I am no cap on this one. Every single time I have played Mystic Enforcer, it has gone really well for me in the past week or so that I've been playing it.
I have never played Mystic Enforcer one time in my life. I've had decks like when Ben Rubin and Brian Kibler made Sickest Ever deck, and I wasn't playing on. They were playing that, I think, on the Master Series, and then traveling for Grand Prix. I didn't play in that season at that point, so I had won a PTQ at the beginning of the season, and I came back and I won a $1,000 tournament in Neutral Ground with the original blue-green version of Miracle Grow, and that was when I learned to love Annul. Man, Annul is a good card. But then I just didn't play anymore. I didn't have to ever figure out adding Taiga for Swords to Plowshares. That wasn't a thing I had to figure out. But so I never played it. And then later, years later, in 2004, 2002, it must have been 2005-ish, when Billy Moreno made the Flash Hulk deck. Our best deck in testing was a Canadian Threshold deck, but obviously the deck that made it out of Michael J's living room was Flash Hulk. So,
there you go.
So Mystic Enforcer never
crossed your mind to play Mystic Enforcer in Rug Nimble Mongoose deck?
I never played that. When I played Legacy, I used to play Cephalid Breakfast. But I will say a funny thing people don't remember. Steve Saden's Flash Hulk deck that he won Columbus with, long touted as the best deck ever played at a Grand Prix, had Quirion Dryad in the sideboard, and it was the worst Quirion Dryad. That guy was often
just a 2/2.
A 2/2, yeah. But I mean, he got the Grand Prix
but for the low price of 2 cards and U1G, you could flash it in on your opponent's end step and get to work.
Let me tell you about that deck. You don't even need to know how your combo works for it to operate at 11 out of 10 cylinders, and I think the hybridization of Counterbalance, just throw Counterbalance into the deck and you just blind beat people in a deck with Sensei's Divining Top and Brainstorm. You didn't need to have a lot of, let's say, technical pilot skill. The deck did a lot of work.
They call modern Magic the battle cruiser format, but you're making it sound like the olden days were less agentic, if you will.
This is Legacy, right? So at some point, all the formats that aren't standard, like literally every format that's not standard, is just a joke format, right? So standard for the longest time was the only format that was ever developed. And so the cards were just fall into... I mean, you see this now with Legacy where, Baldur's Gate cards... just that like a 5 casting cost 2/2 from Baldur's Gate is now dominating Legacy or whatever. Like no one ever realized that if you could get an infinite return on this 2/2, that infinite was pretty big. So the formats were just standard or bust, and off that I guess I kind of extended to block constructed because those cards were at least tested against each other. But at some point, like Counterbalance and Sensei's Divining Top were never 2 cards that were developed to be played together, right? Like that that didn't occur to that. Counterbalance was the third set of the Ice Age block, which arguably should be legal in pre-modern.
Yes,
it is in the original old days. Ice Age block third set was Homelands.
Hold on, what do we get?
Nobody believes that. No one ever played that format.
What do we get?
Serrated Arrows. That card was banned in the original Ice Age block eventually because it would have been too good. But it doesn't matter, Lanny. Nobody ever played the format.
All right, let's legalize. Okay, off the top of your head, I guess let's both play this because we're.
Yeah.
I have Scryfall up, but I just closed it. Top of your head, most impactful addition from the set Cold Snap to pre-modern.
Oh, it's obviously going to be Counterbalance. Even if you don't have a card like Brainstorm, which is banned in pre-modern, if you play it in a mirror-ish context, the fact that you have so many casting costs that are similar to your opponent's casting costs is going to give you free card advantage blind, right?
You have to hit on the first one. Your opponent may be playing the Rock.
Yeah, but what if it's? I don't think that you just necessarily just blind put card Counterbalance in every blue deck. But I think, like, let's say you're playing Dr. Surf and Surf, and it's turn 2, and I have a Daze in my hand. I might tap out for Counterbalance, and that's going to be a big problem for you when so many of your cards cost 1 mana, and then the other
important ones that interact with Dreadnought.
So it's just also, even if it doesn't counter 100 cards per turn, it's Rishodon port, right? Like, people have to kind of check it out, like, stick their toe in the water. Is this going to resolve? And then also,
it's like pretty nasty if you like try to disenchant the Counterbalance. Just reveal Impulse on the top of your library.
The wickedest thing was when people tried to do that with like a split second card, where like you can't interrupt it, but then they still just got the relevant casting cost. Yeah.
You'd have to play Creeping Mold and Vindicate. I mean, Dreadnought really has no 3s, so you're only countering ones and 2s, and then obviously you'll have lands sometimes.
4s are pretty good in Dreadnought, right?
Yeah, but you're never gonna flip a 4, right? Because you literally don't have Brainstorm preordained. Like, your only control is Portent, and you could put Scroll Rack in your deck if you want to get that Sensei top feel.
You wouldn't do that, but
you wouldn't play
foils.
You wouldn't play Scroll Rack Counterbalance. You wouldn't play Scroll Rack Counterbalance. You can rack 1, 2, and 3 on the top of your library. If your opponent plays a 2, you cast Opt and you don't bottom. If your opponent casts a 3, you cast Opt and you do bottom.
I think you prepared for this topic, that you have your Counterbalance notes for pre-modern.
No, I was going to say Scred.
I'm riffing.
I was literally sitting here. I was like, I don't know any of the cards in this set. And I was just going to be like, is it Scred? Is it?
So here's the problem with Scred. Scred was basically Swords of Plowshares in Standard when it was legal. It was a big deal up through, I don't know, Worlds 2008 or something like that. Maybe at least 2007. I don't have a perfect remembrance of what years were which. But for it to be Swords of Plowshares, you kind of have to have a lot of snow-covered mountains in play.
True.
There is a rampant growth, though. I can't remember the name of it.
It's
the north.
Snow growth, yeah.
Yeah. Into the north is good because it can also get scrying sheets. So actually, maybe red-green Oath Peluche would be insane with
scrying sheets and Oath Peluche.
Yeah, just one.
Interesting.
Right. So you would have to reimagine this somewhat, right? But maybe there could be a scrying sheets deck. Oran Viper. I think Oran Viper would have been high on my list, but nobody plays Ophidian, or very few people play Shadow Mage Infiltrator in pre-modern, but that would have been high on my list. There's the Valkyrie, which I think is a 6-drop. That one's it's probably not good enough for pre-modern. But
we've got some hosers. We have Flash Freeze. We have Deathmark.
Oh, Deathmark would be possibly good for the people who can't play Dystopia because all of the permanents in their black decks are green. That's one.
All right, let me tell you about a card that black decks are going to eat up. Hakon Stromgald Scourge.
It's pronounced Hwalkin.
Guacamole Stromgald Scourge. We're talking 3/3 can only be cast from your graveyard. That's value right there.
That deck was that card was quite popular in a black, white, or let's call it Esper, or I guess Dromar colored deck in Standard, where it combined with Peace of Mind. So Peace of Mind's legal in pre-modern, right? So you Peace of Mind Hwalkin, and it's just a value engine where you're discarding it into your graveyard. It's now eligible to be cast, but you can like chump block and stuff. It's good with if you had a Pox type card.
Peace of Mind, Exodus, 1 and a white for an enchantment. White, discard a card, gain 3 life. The inverse of Ivory Tower, if you will.
Yeah, so this was actually one of the top strategies in Standard going into states of the first year that Cold Snap was legal. No, I wanted, on the subject of brewing decks and me not brewing that many decks, one of the ones that I wanted to come up with was Peace of Mind Shard Phoenix, like a red-white control deck. The problem is that deck is going to have the same like kind of black-white controller Rifter problem that 4 of the top 5 decks in the format have mass mana removal. So I don't know. Like I have the coolest value engine that can never beat that and can also never beat Survival of the Fittest.
So here's the deal. Yeah. Here's my assignment to the entire pre-modern playing format world. My assignment is to kill your opponent sooner rather than later. That is my thing. So you can let's just remove from the discussion black-white control, Rifter, any deck that contains Eternal Dragon. Don't get me started on Thawing Glaciers.
It is a different world than it was when I started playing.
I can't even really think about even like these like Oathy control decks that aren't Oath Ponza. Like I have played a lot. So this week, my wife was working a lot, so I was in the freeform practice room streets, basically the casual commons of Magic Online, and I've been recording those matches for YouTube, and I have been basically feasting on opponents who refuse to kill me. And this is where Mystic Enforcer comes in. Because if 2 players are both trying to just do nothing for X amount of turns, the player with Mystic Enforcer will win. And then all of a sudden flying becomes like the most relevant piece of text ever. So even in like one of the reasons why Mystic Enforcer is good against black-green survival is not just because it has protection from black and it'll never leave the battlefield, but black-green survival has no recourse to killing you before you kill them with Mystic Enforcer. And I've noticed that having some kind of end game in your dumb mid-range deck, and Grotog is a dumb mid-range deck, is like really, really good. It's why Terrageddon gets to hang and every other mid-range deck kind of sucks. Phil, when he was first developing the black-green rock deck, Phil Rock, before it morphed into black-green survival, was just playing 4 Deranged Tournament. He was just like, I'm not interested in waiting around for this game to end after I like activate Pernicious Deed. Like, I'm gonna play Deranged Tournament, and then that'll be my 10 mana 9 power way to get out of this after your Duress Cabal therapies have sort of gotten their pay. So my assignment to you is absolutely please kill your opponent. Have a plan to kill your opponent. Any dirtling in this format will be punished. You're going to get tided. Your opponent's going to do something gigantic. Your opponent could just be playing Tron.
Do you think that's ever going to come around? Right. So I'm already to the point where, hey, you remember when we declared Red dead? Maybe it's actually pretty good, but it does have some semi-incurable problems, but like the rest of its spread is actually like it really dawned on me when that matchup against the Rack Tempting Worm deck was so lopsided in favor of red. I'm like, I think we might have prematurely declared this deck dead.
Well, we did that, and then literally the week later, the red won the largest tournament.
So like that could come around like 1 week after I'm like, Michael J. Flores, #1 proponent of Basic Mountain in pre-modern starting in 2022, has declared Basic Mountain to be the worst Basic Swamp to be the best Basic, asterisk actually second best Basic. And now I'm like, well, red
on the other hand,
be okay.
Right, so I also got my hands on a little bit of some red-black goblins. And let me tell you, if you thought that red-black goblins cannot beat random green mid-range decks, the card Perish would like to have a word. And oh my god, Perish is disgusting if it kills one creature. But
that creatures could often be too big for red removal.
Exactly. They're too big for red removal, too bad. You can't naturalize it, right? Naturalize kills the biggest creature in the format, but it does not kill the second, third, fourth, and fifth biggest creature of the format. Let me tell you about a creature that Perish deals with that no other black removal spell can. That's right, Mystic Enforcer. You can be facing down an opponent with 2 Mystic Enforcers in play, unable to get your Goblin Horde through.
Of cigarettes did Mystic Enforcer's agent slip you under the table at Finback? Lanny, there's a lot of crazy cigarettes under here. We need to make Mystic Enforcer the next tempting worm.
Listen, the best part is I can do maximum Mystic Enforcer glazing on this podcast because it was reprinted as an uncommon in Dominaria Remastered. So you cannot buy out this card if you wanted to. So go get them. Get your cheap copies. Get only 4. Get 4 for your homies. Save 4 for me. Mike, if you would like to get 30 and we'll just stamp them and give them out at LobsterCon, or I'll stamp them and give them out at LobsterCon.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to be there.
I know. And Mystic Enforcer is the truth. And anyways, on the topic of goblins, you once stated that you were very bearish on goblins into the Armageddon Terravor strategy. And with that, I
lost that matchup when I was playing for a top 8 once. So I feel that way.
Fundamentally, I agree with it on some points, but if your deck contains Terminate, Terminate or Smother,
the card is pronounced Terminate.
And Perish in the sideboard, your opponent will never have a Terravor to put on the battlefield prior to their Armageddon, and they're not going to Armageddon you when you have 3 pile drivers in play.
Do we Burning Wish in this deck?
I mean, sure. I mean, I would love to.
Prospector gets so good once you start Burning Wishing.
Because you can Living Death. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm down.
That's pretty freaking asymmetrical, right? And then like all your guys come back with haste.
I'm sort of into not playing any. I'm sort of into not playing like narrow cards in the main deck, but so Burning Wish solves that problem. But the problem is Goblins just uses all of its mana all the time. But Burning Wish is a 2-drop, which Goblins has none of. So what if we, instead of playing Richtenport, which is our other 2-drop, we play Burning Wish and we play all the colors. So then we can just get anything out of our sideboard to solve any problem.
Like a Hull Breach?
I mean, a Hull Breach is definitely on the menu. Hopefully there's a 1 mana sorcery that destroys artifacts.
1 mana sorcery that destroys artifacts.
Yeah.
I'm 90% sure there's a 1 mana green sorcery that destroys enchantments.
That'll work. That'll work if if we lobby to have Cold Snap unbanned, we can go get Deathmark, like you said. Yeah, we can get Deathmark. Deathmark is sick.
That's our 3-drop.
MV.
How many Shadow Blood Ridge in our deck? 4.
All of them. Yeah, we need every. Okay, so no sorceries helping us here. The best we can do is Meltdown. So
Meltdown's not bad. It's not a baddie.
Kind of whatever. Yeah, I mean, we'll take Meltdown, right? Because if your opponent has like 7 Mox Diamonds in play, you're gonna get that Meltdown.
I got to tell you, because you've gone so fast in terms of your thought process, because you run like Snowpiercer itself, in the era of Mickey 17, you run like Snowpiercer itself in terms of the relenting juggernaut of your mind. But I was just on such a roller coaster already this podcast, not to invoke 3 or 4 different analogies that we're throwing into a blender together. But I was just like, you know what I'm going to play at the meetup this Tuesday? Black-white control. But I'm going to play Negator in the sideboard because Fran said to on Non-Idiots.
You're going to go 3 and 2. You'll go 2 and 2.
Then you said all these things, and I'm just like, I even said to Fran that Negator sounds pretty exploitable, right? Like maybe it works for a game, but then once they know it's there, like their plows are back in or whatever.
Their plows are in. You're an Exalted Angel.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I was just like, what am I even thinking about? Like, this sounds terrible. It's just like a 3-drop. The problem is you have these fundamental strengths against these decks, and then you can close them out with Negator. And I'm like, I don't know, man.
Let me tell you, you have fundamental strengths against no decks. Quick visit to the Duress Crew datasheet, and you will see that Black-White Control is 56% against Dreadnought, 52% against Grotog, 53% against Survival Madness, 66.7% against Landstill. That makes sense. The Eternal Dragon deck is good against Landstill, and then loses to everything else.
All right.
Lane, literally everything else.
Do you remember a conversation we had on Secret Discord where Tom and Fran were claiming that Black-White Control was the best quote-unquote control deck in the format? And like, you know, they're just posting these Black-White Control decks.
This says more, pause you right there. This says more about the other control decks that existed rather than Black-White Control.
And then my argument was, I don't know what WTF you're talking about. It's not even a control deck, right? And then Fran's just like, you have to have blue to be a control deck. And my argument was something along the lines of, I don't know, you have to not get blown out by an opponent doing plan A and have no recourse against their plan A in order to be a control deck. And I think that I'm being proven forward here because this is literally, if you had a cheerleader and her, you know, logo on her pom-poms was the pom-poms of a deck that could not stop the opponent from Armageddoning all of its land. And then like the logo on her sweater was the logo of, you know, who can't stop the tide control combo except if the opponent is extremely careless. Because they can stop it if the opponent is careless. That would be Black-White Control.
Yeah, I mean, let's zoom out here and say that like you were just like Black-White Control is a removal deck, not a control deck. To which I would say like that's like saying, you know, X deck is like a beatdown deck, not a tempo deck. Like tempo and control and card, like all this stuff, it's all just words, right? Like at the end of the day, you're playing a deck that like doesn't take the initiative, that sits back, tries to answer things, and then plays a few big threats to close out the game once it has, you know, nothing threatening it back. Now, I think it's more accurate to say that it's not a good control deck. Like, and I would say that no control decks in the format are particularly good unless you count Mono Blue Tide or Replenish, right?
Mono Blue Tide is a Drago deck. It is literally a Drago deck of the Bueller 1998 style.
Yeah, it just plays Tide instead of Morphin.
That has a combo grafted onto it, right? And it's like, and Annie won a lot of matches without the combo even in his deck, right? So you win with like just we used to call it blue sly.
Okay, so I'm with you there, except for, you know, the Andy's evolution, and I think the Mono Tide evolution, because he plays 4 main deck, right? Has been thinking about matchups more often being like matchups where you are built around Tide resolving even in places where you wouldn't expect it to. Like, I mean, I don't have his primer sideboard guide, which you can find at spikecolony.com. But I don't know if he boards out the Tides in any matchups anymore. Do you know?
Yeah, I don't believe he boards it. I don't think he boards it entirely out in any matchups anymore. That was the thing that we were talking about where I was just like, I can see cutting some Tides against, you know, red deck. First, I was very surprised when he kept Tide in against me when we were playing for the meetup championship. And I was on Goblins and we talked it out and he's just like, the problem is the Goblins deck kind of has inevitability. Yeah. You need to have some amount of catch up early to just not die. But even if that happens, like the blue deck still needs to attack you 10 times with a 2-power creature land. Like that's and like the Goblin deck has garbage on the ground, right? Like, you know, you can't necessarily just keep getting in with Mishra's Factory. So you need to have some way to recoup a massive amount of card advantage to counteract the fact that the opponent is playing with Goblin Ringleader and Siege Gang Commander just to get the board to 0. And then now you're at this thing where like, oh, my 4 spikes are fully powered and it's turn 7, right? Like that becomes a very powerful asymmetry. But if you don't have that, you're just like this deck where like you're drawing a 4 spike and your opponent has 7 untapped lands and active Rishon on port, and you're just barely not dying to the 2/2 they still have in play.
Yeah, I mean, it feels to me that the Mono Blue Tide deck should just be running like my opponent did in the leagues, like a lot of blue blast. But of course,
I think Andy's up to 4 chill now.
Yeah, he has 4 chill, and I think that it's interesting because chill and tide do very similar things. They're very good with each other, but they don't solve like the problem.
They don't solve problem A.
Yeah, so it's like I would rather have all of my tides available and then a bunch of blue blast, and then have my plan B to tide my opponent to the maximum, and blue blast to enable me to ever tide my opponent to the maximum. Now, this is different between goblins and burn. It proved to be a very effective strategy when I was playing burn for my tide opponent to have 6 blue blast. But
that's because burn challenges 2 different. It asks 2 different kinds of questions, but the thing that they have in common is the way they ask those questions is so cheap.
Right.
Versus like Goblins asks maybe 4 different kinds of questions, but one of their modes is literally like play 1 very powerful card per turn.
And like, blue blast lines up really good against that, right?
Yeah, so that's very, very different from a deck that's just like challenge the battlefield, challenge your life total, right? Like challenge your top deck all for 1 mana.
Yeah.
Or 0 mana.
So my vision of what happens is that you have a lot of blue blasts. So you don't get touched by Lackey. That's a good start. And then you have other counter spells and card draw in your deck, and you can let all the 1/1s resolve. You can stifle a Goblin Matron. You can stifle a fetch land sometimes. You can stifle a Siege King Commander. Like, you can stifle a Ringleader. So stifle ends up being like drawing a card all of the time, in addition to enabling Parallax Tide. And then eventually you tide them, and they have some 2/2s, and you have 3/3s in the form of Mishra's Factories. Maybe you can hold down the ground with Mishra's Factory and fly over with Fairy Conclave. In addition to your tools to have quicksand and like whatever. So if you just like reduce your goblin opponent's battlefield to like a couple 1/1s and a couple 2/2s and no lands, I mean, you're probably going to win, right? It's
really hard to operate that defensive strategy if your opponent has any operating mana, because if they resolve a Siege Gang Commander at some point, right? That's a hard card to keg.
Yeah.
Right. And so like every garbage goblin that they have after that makes it very difficult for you to win, because like a goblin token, a stray Goblin Matron's Body, like all trade with a Fairy Conclave at that point. Right. And so you still have to win the game, and you're likely to deck before they are because you have cards like Back Your Fiction and Accumulated Knowledge in your deck. So I do think you have to do something in order to just turn off this aspect of your opponent's deck. Which is just to make it so that, so they're like kind of gear 2ing you by accident. Like they're incidentally gear 2ing you, and it's like they're gear 2ing you far in the future. You have to just turn off their ability to do that.
All right, let's just have four blasts and 2 chill then. Let's just invert the
I think Andy's probably put more thought into this than you have just off the top of your head right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. But what if the Goblins deck evolves, right? What if the Goblins deck that he was facing are no longer there? What if he was over-indexed on Burn, under-indexed on Goblins, and the meta shifts more towards Goblins as a way to answer Terrageddon, Dreadnought, Replenish, and...
Why would he possibly have been over-indexed on Burn? What could possibly have been
Yeah. I wonder what going to influence that. But think about it, right? So we were like... Basically, the Duress Crew data sheet is what made us low on Goblins, right? We're just like, this Goblins deck is 48%.
No, I just looking at its large Swiss tournament performance internationally for like 3-4 months.
Yeah,
I was just like, Elves is good, Goblins is underperforming. That was my conclusion going into Lobstercon, and that proved out there.
So if you say that, and Elves and Goblins actually are going to do decent against a metagame of, so Elves being bad against Replenish is a big hole, right? Goblins can hang with Replenish. It's not great. It's not great against Replenish. It's according to the sheet, it's 33%. I would spot them a few more points, assuming that they maybe had some kind of tool, like, maybe a little bit of sideboard changes or just like sideboarding a little bit better. Either that or, the Replenish deck, trying to prepare for Goblins might make it worse against Dreadnought, and Replenish doesn't want to be worried.
What cards can a green creature deck even have against replenish? Like Tangle Wire the best thing? It's
Yeah,
some combination of Tangle Wire and maybe like Wasteland Rishadon Port type action. But then you're still like not great against Frantic Search.
So Tangle Wire Wasteland is going to get you, and then unfortunately Frantic Search beats that. But Replenish players have been aggressive about eyeing that Frantic Search spot. They would never go below 4 copies of an Attunement, but Frantic Search, a 0 mana Attunement, is on the chopping block.
I believe Mengu's version has only 3 Frantic Search.
Every version has 3 that's been in the charts.
Rich's has 4.
Okay,
I just made a deck pick of it for.
All right, so he might have gone back, but it's been one of the cards that he's cut quite often. I think 4 is a good adjustment because of Rishadon Port. Like getting to that, like the fact that you can get around Port and you can turn it into a ritual is like really, really important against Terrageddon, which is like, Terrageddon's always doing math on how they can possibly just keep you off 4 mana for the entire game before Armageddoning you. So Frantic Search can throw a huge wrench in that plan by sort of coming out of nowhere, either stopping the port or obviously making you mana positive with the addition of a Sol land. So, if you go into your turn and you have island plains and then your opponent ports, I guess if they port the island, then you're cooked. So you go into the turn, you have island. Then you can't make white. Okay, so you go into turn, you have Sky Cloud Expanse. Sky Cloud Expanse and Dark Our Ways. You can get ported, play a Soul Land, Frantic Search, pitch some sweet, tasty enchantments, cast Replenish, and then end their career. So these are all good things for Replenish.
But you still need that Frantic Search to be really good money, right? Like,
well,
it is only draw to discard too.
I assume that in this stage of the game, you're sitting there, you've gotten wasted, you've gotten ported. Like the important thing to note about the Terrageddon deck is like, while it is Wasteland porting you, it doesn't do anything else. Right? Weathered Wayfarer activation costs 1 mana. Rishadon Port activation costs 2 mana. Like, during this time, they didn't sneak in a Call of the Herd somehow unless they had double Mox Diamond. Like, all they did was turn 1, Mox Diamond, don't play a land, Wayfarer pass.
This deck is so deadly for Replenish?
Because once they put you in jail, right, there's 2 things that are happening here. So you're getting Wastelanded ported by this. You're getting Wastelanded. Mostly you're getting Wastelanded chain, right? So if you don't plow the Weathered Wayfarer, like you can't play any non-basic lands. Not a good starting point. If you manage to amass some amount of basic lands through this, you're going to start getting ported. So you need 4 basic lands or 3 basic lands, 2 of them being blue, a Soul Land, and a Frantic Search.
And I guess you're like in extra trouble if like you have to keep making land drops. If you don't make land drops, they're just going to get ahead of you.
Yeah, so let me tell you about my least favorite card, Attunement, and how it interacts with making land drops.
In this scenario, my least favorite card has got to be City of Traders, where they're just like, oh, sure, you've got that.
Well, I think sure, so. City of Traders is actually good, right? You're just going to hold it in your hand and like catch them out of nowhere with it.
Would you hold it in your hand rather than making a land drop if that was your
Yes, yeah, target? Absolutely. Because remember, they're doing nothing, right? And also, they sort of have to do nothing to stay behind you on land. Because the Wasteland Factory stops as soon as they play +1 land over this, and they can use their lairs and they can use their fetch land and tricks, but the fact of the matter is even if they fetch land trick you, like they're still going to end up positive on lands. And then because they don't play Lotus Veil, which would be an amazing card to put as a 1-of in your Terrageddon deck, just saying, they can't get behind you on lands. And then, there's like a threshold. If you can keep 3 lands in play, even if you're facing port, like now you're kind of cooking because they port you have 2 lands. And then again, that City of Traders comes in or that Frantic Search comes in and ends their career. So but the thing is, during this time, 1 card, so you can't really sneak in Call the Herd if you're like really busy Wasteland porting your opponent and like they're on 2 lands, so you're on 2 lands. But what you can fit in on 2 lands is Sylvan Library. And then Sylvan Library is really good at finding the card Armageddon. So once you get to 3 lands, you're going to get Armageddon. And then you're just put in the Wasteland port zone all back again.
Lanny, can I tell you, when I saw that deck pick, when I made the deck pick of Phil's deck, the Terrageddon deck with Gerard's Verdict that beat me up at the last Manhattan meetup, I didn't think twice about Sylvan Library because this was before I found my Miri Skiles kick, right? So it was before that, so I hadn't thought about it. But then when I saw STB, these meetup winner, just like, oh, this these could be Miri Skiles, because now I'm in the Miri Skyle is just an even more mana efficient version of Sensei's Divining Top. Don't ask me how I got there. But then I realized, my God, Sylvan Library Abundance is anything anyone's ever wanted to do in their life. Sylvan Library is clearly the right card to play in this deck.
So Sylvan Library is, unfortunately, in the world of Sylvan Library versus Miri's Guile, you just have to play Sylvan Library because it is so good when your Terravor gets Plowshared. And like it's just like amazing to just be like,
wow.
Plowshare my 10/10 Terravor, I'll take 2 cards, right? Yeah. So the unfortunate thing is the scenario which I just described really, really wants you to have a 1 mana Sylvan Library that you can cast because you're busy activating all the abilities of your stuff, right? So like if you have 1 mana, you top deck your Sylvan Library / Miri's Guile and you only have the 1 mana to spare, you're just like, oh, do I take a turn off porting them? Do I take a turn off activating Wayfarer or wastelanding them? Do I take a turn off activating Treetop Village? Do I take a turn off flashing back Call the Herd, which is like a 4 mana lift? You're sitting there, you have your Gemstone Mines, they're slowly disappearing from play. Like all of these things have like a pretty big influence on like your mana efficiency from turn to turn. So like you just like top deck this Miri Guile, like you might be really hyped because you'll have that 1 mana, but Sylvan Library is just so much more powerful that all of the upside of having like this tempo Miri's Guile play is like sort of erased by the fact that like Sylvan Library actually gives you the cards in like, you know, you might be in a situation where like you need like Sylvan Library being able to draw 1 card deeper allows you to make a better tempo play by giving you the volume that you need to use your mana efficiently on a future turn. One of the biggest examples is like you're kind of sitting here, you've got your Mox Diamond deck, you have like no resources, you want to spend all your mana, and you're like, pick up 2 cards, and you're like, I need the land and I need the card. That's like a big deal for Sylvan Library.
That's really interesting. So Miri's Guile is like a more mana efficient Sensei's Divining Top, but Sylvan Library is a more mana efficient and far, far less life point efficient Necropotent.
Yes. So, it is the like, worst Necropotent ever printed.
A Necropotence that one of the cards that you're drawing with it every turn is always Lightning Bolt, but it's a Lightning Bolt that's directed at yourself.
Yeah.
On balance, it costs you no mana to cast that Lightning Bolt. So it's also a Lotus Petal. So for three life additional, you get a Lotus Petal and a Lightning Bolt, but don't worry, Sylvan Library's got you.
Yeah. So
you take care of it yourself.
So I unfortunately don't think that Terrageddon is a world where Miri's Guile fits, just because the other thing is that the structure of the deck is sort of built to make your opponent pass the turn, right? And if you're like built to make your opponent pass the turn, then you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna wait till I get that land drop and I'm gonna cast the Sylvan Library then. I'm really not in a hurry, because like, let me tell you, Terrageddon is a deck that is just not in a hurry. Like it's just like, I'm gonna do a 3/3, I'm gonna port you. You're under 3/4 mana, so like the thing that you can do is never bigger than my 3/3. And if you finally get to that point in the game where you can do something big and interesting, it's smaller than a Terravor, which at this point is going to be like a 7/7 and an 8/8. And then Armageddon always resets, puts them back into the 2/3 mana zone. And so some decks are really good at operating on 2 to 3 mana. Some decks are good at plowing through. Like if your deck doesn't get wastelanded, like the Weather Wayfarer like plan kind of starts falling apart, and then you're sitting there and you're porting, and just porting is just super inefficient. You're trading 2 mana for 1. And then again, if your opponent is like good at dealing with Terravor, so if you can be indifferent to Weather Wayfarer and handle Terravor, and then you have something for Call the Herd. Again, these are all kind of tall orders, but Perish is a good answer. But then the wheels completely fall off. And so that is kind of the weird thing that I found now that I finally got my hands on Terrageddon. Kind of felt like I was playing it. Like I lost to sprite rights playing Terrageddon because my opponent had 1/1 flyers.
Brian L was so good. He was just like, I'm going to play my spice deck in this regular freeform practice room event against LH.
I mean, I don't know if it was Brian L. himself, but it was certainly somebody inspired by him. This player brought Cunning Wish, Accumulated Knowledge, and in addition to the Gush situation, so you could Cunning Wish for your Rites of Initiation. Undiscovered Paradise, I don't know if that was in Brian L.'s list, but if you need a card in hand, let me tell you.
Just +1 damage.
Yeah. Plus 5 damage. Yeah. So, Sprite writes a hilarious way because, like, nobody can deal with a 1/1 in pre-modern. Like 3 1/1s, really difficult to deal with a pre-modern. The best thing that we have is blocking, right? We just put 1/3/3
with the 12/12.
With the 12/12 or a 3/3 or a 0/4, right? Or a 6/6 flyer. But if you have 3 1/1s and they have
3/3 non-flyer, Lanny. You're getting attacked by 3 1/1s. 0% chance this has 6.
I have never had a 3/3 Mystic Enforcer in play, and I never will. And this is just a fact. This is just a fact of life. You might as well just erase that line of text from the card and then just change its text box. It's 4 mana. It's protection from black. It's a 6/6 flyer. Leave your Phyrexian Furnaces at home. You cannot possibly remove more cards from my graveyard that I can put back in.
I was so on board. I was just like, he's right. This card is just great. I'm going to play this on Tuesday. Then you said the sentence, leave your Phyrexian Furnaces at home. And I have a deck pick that Tom Metelsky sent me open on my desktop right now. And then I remembered half my decks are starting Phyrexian Furnace now. Why would I ever play Mystic Enforcer? This is worse than Black-White Control with Negator in the sideboard. It's the same as Black-White Control with Negator in the sideboard, but the ceiling is so much lower. Instead of a 5/5 trample for 3 that just keeps getting in, I just always have a 3/3 for 4 that never flies, that never gets his giant growth.
So I've been confronted with Phyrexian Furnace. People have played it against me. They're like, what are your accumulated knowledges going to do now, Lanny? And let me tell you what they did. I put a lot of cards into my graveyard, then I put accumulated knowledge in my graveyard, and then I cast an accumulated knowledge. And my opponent had to make a choice. Do I give them a card, or do I not give them a card to like shrink potential future Mystic Enforcers at bay when I already have 12 cards in my graveyard? And they're like, so I can take them off threshold if they don't put anything into their graveyard for the next 7 turns straight, or I can cash this in to remove them from drawing a card. And don't get me wrong, when I was intuitioning for 3 beast attacks, somebody who started turn 1 with the Phyrexian Furnace was really cooking my noodles. But in Groatog, and possibly in your interesting deck that has green and white mana and is capable of putting 7 cards in the graveyard, you are not particularly scared of Phyrexian Furnace. Maybe it comes in turn 1, and again, it cooks your noodles, but most of the time you have 7 cards.
On these kinds of things is not so much that I lose to a card like Phyrexian Furnace. That's not the thing that bothers me. So people are just like, oh, just worried about these kind of blasts or these kind of blasts. You can't worry about blasts or you'll never play blue or red, right? Like, I'm not worried about that. I'm not particularly worried about Gloom. I'm not particularly worried about Perish. The thing that I'm worried about is in a universe where people play cards like Phyrexian Furnace in the main deck, that is indicative of my win percentage being eroded because I've been angled already, right? So I have a clever thing. I have this clever thing I'm going to execute. I have extra percentage. If people are playing this, it just means that I'm not getting that extra percentage.
All right. But let me stop you there. What if I told you that main deck Phyrexian Furnace was only present in really bad decks?
That's not true.
I mean, it is.
What about black-green Tempting Worm Bottomless Pit?
A deck that we've established is really bad? You mean the deck that last week you went on this very podcast and said was bad?
I think I'm going to play. I think I'm going to play it because I built it. I have to play it. Here's the other thing I want to do. I'm normalizing new borders. I thought about this a lot this week, and I think as someone whose greatest joy in pre-modern is actually composing decks and making deck picks, I want to normalize new borders. I think that this whole thing that we have against new borders generally is, I think it's exclusionary and gatekeeping in a way that I don't want to be a part of. Right? Different people can think whatever they want. They can love the format the way that they want. I personally love collecting the cards, right? So making meme decks actually is something I would love to talk about for a few minutes, why I made different meme decks and what the processes were. But like the fact that we don't make deck picks that have new borders, or like, oh, can I borrow this card for the deck pick? And like, I feel like if one of the things that we want to do, I don't know if everybody wants to do this, but this is certainly a thing that I'm personally proud of, is growing pre-modern and getting people who didn't previously play pre-modern to try it out. And that a lot of the people who are in our Discord, a lot of people who communicate with me, they're just like, I started playing this because of, your content, right? Like, what people found our podcast, people who are paying members of our Discord found our podcast, started listening to our podcast, joined the community, traveling for tournaments now, right? Like that is a profile. A ton of the people in Madison started playing pre-modern because I was writing about it on Cool Stuff Inc. That's incredible to me. It makes me feel a certain way. If our whole thing is we're only doing old borders, like not everybody has access to, collections that have the most beautiful version of these old bordered cards, especially when they can get like a perfectly legal game piece for 35 cents, right? Like, why should we create an exclusionary universe?
All right. Let me just stop you there and just say, like, nothing that we do is exclusive to that. Like, I play maximum old border in my decks, except for when it comes to 1, duplicate copies, and 2, cards that I got because I got last place in a JSS.
Which were never
Psychotog
and Shard Phoenix,
which were never playable in the time. Like Shard Phoenix was a card that I got as a promo.
These are your proudest cards that you own. What are their printing borders?
They are player rewards cards and junior super series rewards cards, and you can look up what they look like, and it's hilarious. It is literally the ugliest Psychotog that has ever been made. And look, some may say that all Psychotogs are beautiful. Well, let me tell you, not this one.
What about the Psychotog on the card Shock?
When they changed, that's an ugly Psychotog.
That is so crazy, because this is like the only creature in Magic that's just never gonna die to a Shock.
So it's just kind of funny that like Psychotog, olivey skin, and then the gold border from pre-modern, olivey border, perfect match. What if we just changed that for gold and then made it really, really shiny and foil and just look wrong? That's the Psychotogs that I have. And guess what? They've been with me for over 20 years. They're going to be with me, hopefully to the ends of the earth. And that's why I play them. I think I should make it clear here. Like, we do make jokes, right? We're like, oh, your new border call the herds might as well be proxies. I don't think that, we're engaged in any kind of gatekeeping behavior. I don't think that you need to become an ambassador for new border. I think that old border deck picks look nice. I think that old border deck picks with hilarious new borders also look nice. I published my Dreadnought deck pick, and that Dreadnought contains the Amoket invocation stifle that Itai Kurtzman used to achieve second place. That's signed.
Story.
And Brian Koval, the correct pronunciation of Koval, commented that the one single invocation stifle really makes the photo. I think you can do stuff like this. I think you can do all new border. I think you can not buy new border. Like, you can just buy new border fetches.
Whatever cards you have, you can
call the herd, curse totem. I think that you can proxy up guys' cradles as long as you're, not like playing in a non-proxy tournament. This is just such a non-issue, and it is a reason why we made pre-modern for non-idiots, because we were tired of discussing something that had nothing to do with like playing the game. And like, it's not that we don't enjoy the aesthetics of the decks that we own. You enjoy the aesthetics very much. You've made your meme decks. You've enjoyed them as little art projects. They do kind of behave in that way. It's fun to acquire the cards, promo code Flores on coolstuffinc.com. But at the end of the day, like, they don't make new border Tempting Worm, but they do make it on the list. They do make new border Mystic Enforcer, and I encourage you to get plenty of them. And I just, I don't care. A lot of the Goblins cards are much better to get new border. You can get new art, old border, all this stuff. Like, I don't even want to like talk about it ever again, because I don't want to give any amount of credit to like the idea that this could possibly relate to anybody thinks. Like, if you SpongeBob counterspell me, I literally do not give a fuck. Like,
I will put my card in the graveyard.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll divert the counterspell so that it targets divert, but I will not have any opinion about this. I will not clutch, like, the pearls that I have will remain completely unclutched. My pearls are just like in excellent condition, not a single fingerprint on them. My gibbons will remain unhidden. Everything will carry on as usual. I just want to talk for myself. Is that okay? Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. The reason I wanted to bring it up is because I feel like I personally was perpetuating something that I no longer want to be associated with. Like, I would make comments about, like, card borders, in part because, like, I would go win a meetup and I'd be like, oh, I won the meetup. And then you're like, and you'd say, and you still have Alara meddling mages. And I was like, oh, man, that stings. Right?
Well, that's because you know Chris Picula personally. That's offensive to your friend. I'm speaking on behalf of your good friend. Okay,
I totally get it.
Like, Picula is still chilling.
Personally responsible for me getting back on the Pro Tour.
Yeah, he's still chilling. He's still chilling on Twitter every now and then, and he's getting needles because people are just like, oh, check out those meddling mages, and he has to be out there defending. Any other card, I don't.
I just don't. What I'm saying is, like, I even made this comment. I think I made a post. I'm like, oh, this mail day I had was embarrassing because I just bought a bunch of new border cards because I just needed to fill out decks. I'm like, why is it embarrassing?
You've become really aware of your microaggressions in this moment. I really appreciate the progressive woke Mike that we finally gotten to.
This is literally wrong. Yeah. That's the conclusion I can do.
It's been like 3 years of you just being like the most incendiary, like, don't give a shit about like what I say or who's hurt by it person, for you to like completely 360. And he's like, the one part where I care if people's feelings get hurt is on the topic of new border cards.
Well, it's just to me, it's just like such a haves have nots thing. Like, Mike Arnold made a comment in Non Idiots this week. He's just like, I like playing my guys' cradles because I got them for $10 or for $20. You got to say for $20, and I'm like, at least the first 8 guys' cradles that I own. This is how I started mine. Were all won in money draft. Does that mean that I got them for $10? Right? Like, very few people have the experience of, they didn't even have to buy a Gaia's Cradle. All of my Gaia's Cradles are booty for preparing for Pro Tours. They have a cost to me of less than $10, right? That is not the usual circumstances for people entering pre-modern, right? And it is so not empathetic for people who are just like, they have the choice between a $50 uncommon and a reprint, right? Like, this is so not equitable. And I want more people to play. I love the fact that I posted a bad blue-green Oath deck, and that got Sam Black to start playing pre-modern. I love the fact that people who are Pro Tour champions from eras past come out of the woodwork, Zvi Moshowitz, Osip Levidovic, Tom Martell, and they're like, I'm really interested in this format. Hey, can I borrow a deck? I'm in town, blah, blah, blah. I love the fact that that's coming into our communty.
Though notably, Dave Williams is a sicko for the original printings. So
not a Pro Tour champion.
Got him. Wait, you're telling me the person that carried you in all those money drafts to get you those cradles is the person that you choose to slander
here? Pro Tour champion, and I often won a match. I would often go 1-2. It happened. But yeah, I can't believe Dave kept drafting with me. I was like the worst teammate. Anyway,
it was just a bigger challenge. It was like upping the stakes for him, right? It's like he's playing his 20 against their 10 because you got Flores. And he's like, you know what? I don't even care. Like, just
one night we played so much. At some point, we were just playing for the cards because people were maniacs. It's like 6 a.m. We've played like 4 money drafts coming into this, right? And they're just like, keep playing. Just, no more money. Just play for the cards.
Play for the cards. I'll stake you. You. I'm in. Your 4 cradles to my Mike Flores' car. Like, let's go. He's like, I'll spot you the car if I lose it. You're good.
Anyway, yeah, I just want to normalize it, and I think, like, I'll probably I don't know if I'll actually start putting new border cards and deck picks that I post. But I maybe I should. Right? I think it's just. It's a thing. I just want to normalize it. I want people to feel welcome. I want people to experience the things that I love about pre-modern, right?
I mean, it's
like,
look, it's a no. It's a, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it at all, right? If somebody's like out there, they post a deck pic, they got some like fully unbordered Carplusan forests, and like, unless you're Chris Picula or a direct friend and you know who you're talking to is also a direct friend of Chris Picula, you know, those Alara meddling mages are like 15 cents. So like, get after it.
I do own a proper set of meddling mages.
I have 8 Chris's and I have 4 ladies.
I have also this other one because I just, at the time that I got these, this one, I don't know what the hell set this is from. This is not the
the full bordered.
But I just had all these decks that had meddling mage in them, and I was just like, at least for the purpose of having decks in the playtesting box, like I don't have to have all the best borders for every single playtest deck. Could just swap them out when I'm going to go play in a tournament.
I mean, I personally think that it is a lot of fun to have invocation stuff. I think it's confusing because they made Invocation Force of Will days, like all the blue cards are invocations, so you can like have a lot and they all look the same, so that's kind of annoying. But like, you know, like Invocation or Mystical Archive Lightning Bolt, like, you know, all those random stuff, those cards kind of are like cool and interesting, and like when you're sitting there you're looking at the same cards all the time, like it's fun.
The one card I am vulnerable to is the Japanese foil etched shock, just because it's not in any other printings. There's no English printing of this card, and so I'm super vulnerable to that. But like for the most part, like when I bought my like 4th, 5th set of Wooded Foothills, and I wasn't buying good Wooded Foothills, like I was doing it for the meme decks. I was just like, one of the few ways that we have to make something our own, right? Like, you know, if I didn't design this deck, which is a thing you've repeatedly gotten after me for. If I design this deck, I can make it my own. I can internalize part of this experience by assembling cards that are cohesive in a way that makes a good deck pick, that I enjoyed collecting them, that by assembling this, and that is it's just a way to make it your own. And I really resonate with that. And I particularly resonate with that with the meme decks, because, you know, if you look at the burn deck, there's so many cool little twists, turns, stories, and in individual printings. Like
now that we have those nasty Future Sight Urza's baubles, you can just pop off.
But there's only 2 because the other one is the Olerati whiteboard.
Yeah. The only thing we're missing from future past Planar Chaos Sight is Cursed Scroll now, right? And
I have the Brian
it's
Hacker
just gold
border signed by Brian Hacker.
It's like gold border, old border though. But I got you. I mean, you can also just deface your cards by signing them and handing them around. We are, you know, you can make fun promos. We should probably fun promotize some Tempting Worms, even though they're $50 each now, and we should probably.
I think that the Mystic Enforcers is a good idea. I'll get like.
All right. Cool Stuff Inc. Buy them out. Mystic Enforcers. Get your hands on them before we do. And I actually knit them for my decks. Those are fun alters because let me tell you, Mystic Enforcer is a human nomad mystic or something. It's not a cat, but it looks like a cat. And I kind of think that you should just alter it so that it's a cat.
I have to look at the picture now. Isn't it like it looks like a spirit or something?
Human nomad something. It's
only one art to this card.
Human nomad. It is mystic. You're telling me mystic is a creature type and Viashino is not. But yeah, available 4 cents. Dominaria Remastered New Border. Old Border Dominaria Remastered 12 cents. 15 cents. Time Spiral New Bordered. And if you want originals, they're 44 cents, but not for long. And if you want foil originals, I mean, I guess those could go up. But Human Nomad Mystic.
He does look like a cat.
He looks like a cat. He's wearing cat ears. I think he wants to be a cat, and I don't know. Those don't look like functional cat ears.
Is he like one of those trans-species people?
Ooh, interesting. I mean, it could just be like, you know, on his home planet on his home area of Dominaria, you need these ears to like have enhanced hearing, or he's part of like a clan. Anyways, any lore heads, there's no flavor text on this card. Any lore heads, please hit us up for why Mystic Enforcer has cat ears. I should play one of each. There's 4 printings here. I should play one of each because it's all the same art. Well, I can't play 4 because it's a 4-drop. You can't play a bunch.
I mean, what if you were replenished and you had 16 4-drops in your deck?
I mean, you do not have to sell me on tapping an Ancient Tomb, a Mox Diamond, and a Forest to cast this on turn 2. The only problem with this plan is that in that case, it'll be a 3/3.
No, you've already discarded a card. You're halfway there if we're really poor at math.
You're on your way. You're on your way. Look, Mystic Enforcers are super real. I'm just telling you, put it in your deck. Maybe you do have to be a Xerox deck, so like that kind of reduces it to like you can just play it in Grotog or Best Attack. But I think that you could play a deck that doesn't play Wasteland. The thing is, Wasteland's really good for Threshold too. But like, let's play a green-white mid-range deck that has Urza's Bauble, no Wasteland. You have 4 fetches, go up to 6 fetches or something. No Mulch. No Mox Diamond, no Weathered Wayfarer, something else. There's got to be something in the card pool. Maybe it is just Armageddon. And like, you just don't have to play GG1 for Terravor. You don't have to play stupid Mox Diamond. And you can just like, Mystic Enforcer is just as good at closing out games as Terravor in like a lot of situations. And it'll stomp on black removal. So
it won't stomp on black removal, but it will avoid it.
I mean, the one issue is that Terrageddon 3, Armageddon 4 is like a nice little curve, and Mystic Enforcer 4, Armageddon 4 is not the best curve. However,
what about Mystic Enforcer 4, Armageddon 4 make a land drop?
That's what I'm saying. Armageddon is secretly a 5. Like, you don't really want to cast Armageddon without making that first land drop and being on the play. Things to consider.
Is Terrageddon vulnerable to black removal?
It's more vulnerable than Mystic Enforcer. I mean, if your Terravor gets smothered by your Goblins opponent, like it gets smothered or terminated.
Well, I'm just thinking, like, is this actually... So, I'm not talking about Mystic Enforcer in the abstract. I'm not talking about Mystic Enforcer as a card.
You're talking about Terrageddon, yeah.
I'm talking about Mystic Enforcer as a potential sideboard card or one of, or some kind of tool in specifically Terravor deck. And my question is, does this solve any problems that Terrageddon has? And so I don't know if that's
true. So it doesn't solve your Perish problem, unfortunately.
Doesn't solve any common problems.
Well, getting your Terravors killed is like a really reasonable problem, right? So this is a deck that wants to play Meddling Mage, Sylvan Safekeeper to fight against removal decks. It wants to play Call the Herd to fight against removal decks. Things would be like a lot simpler if your threats were stickier while still remaining a good size, right? So, I've examined this with the Grotog deck. It's like, you don't actually need to play a lot of threats. The threats that you play just need to be like either really excellent on the battlefield, really good against removal, or both. Because then Grotog doesn't have to be a Meddling Mage deck. It can just be like a counterspell your Swords of Plowshares once, because all the Swords of Plowshares deck only ever draw 1. Unless it's like turn 15, then they might have drawn 2.
In Legacy, people draw 3 copies of the card you don't want them to draw in the top 15 cards of their deck. Like every time.
Yeah, let me tell you.
That's my experience of Legacy.
Let me tell you about this card Ponder and this other card Brainstorm. And just in case that was like not enough, you have Preordain. Like, do you know how much Preordain, like just Preordain would break Pre-Modern in half? Mark my words. Like,
I was playing Legacy the other week, and I'm just like, well, they don't have a second Wasteland, right? And they've got 3 Wastelands in the top 15 every GD time.
It's the top 40, though, with how many cards you look at.
It is unreal. Unreal how many times they draw that. And I need to know this by... Well, luckily I'm playtesting tomorrow.
Yeah. So I was playing Goblins against Dreadnought, and my opponent had cast two Portents and 2 Impulses. And I was just like, so they've drawn 7 cards. It's turn 5. So they've taken 5 draw steps. That's 12 cards. And then they've looked at 14 more cards. I'm just like... They have seen it all, my friend. They have seen all of their deck. Anything that they can possibly want or need, they got it. And guess what? I cast Terminate targeting Phyrexian Dreadnought, and it resolves. So,
nice.
So sometimes you do that. And then, of course, sometimes you just like, they've looked at, it's turn 5. They've looked at all those cards, but you also have 3 1/1s on the table. And let me tell you what can't race 3 1/1s. 1/12/12.
1/12/12.
Yeah. So that's kind of my...
And a fling race 3/1.
Yes. And also that deck contains Fire Ice. We will have to save that topic for next week. This has had to be a short and sweet one because I am playing Grotog in a tournament in 9 minutes. It turns out that it's at 10:30, not 11.
Oh, okay.
So You get to have your afternoon back or your morning back. I've got to play this tournament. I'm going to play Grotog. It's not even Grotog anymore. It's Grow a Mystic Enforcer. How do you spell that? G-A-M-E.
Are you going to stream this, or it's just going to go
that's game.
Into...
I will put it in the... I will play live in the secret Discord.
Okay, sweet.
Or not the secret Discord. The Discord? Yeah, the bougie Discord, the one that you pay to get into.
The thing that is hilarious to me is Mashlegs joined this week just to see,
just to look at 23andMe. So like we literally cashed in like, $5.
I couldn't not see 23andMe. I joined the Discord to see it. I've seen it. I am satisfied. This is in fact an F-.
Yeah. Well, he didn't say it was an F-. He was just he was just like,
I said it was.
It's like the dead dove in Arrested Development. He's like, I don't know what I expected, but like this is
he got what he was paying.
This is around there. It's important now to shout out, of course, Mashlegs. That is Ethan Pullinger, Chris Toller jumped in, OG Squee, Pancakes, all becoming a member. Thanks for joining the Spike Colony stuff. I promise that I will use all of these resources to bribe my wife into letting me spend more of my free time in making Magic the Gathering pre-modern related content. It's important. So also I have to shout out, Phil Nguyen, the Madison crew, they've also supported Spike Colony as well. But your support just by listening means the world to me. Your support just by, jumping in, formerly known as Pre-Modern for Non-Idiots, could be, at this rate, it could become Pre-Modern for Non-Idiots again.
The whole population is like, I want the old name back.
Again, it doesn't imply anything about other pre-modern. Like some groups are called Pre-Modern USA. Some groups are called Pre-Modern for Non-Idiots. Some groups are called Pre-Modern for online players.
I'm in all these groups because they invite me. So they're just like, oh, join Pre-Modern Denmark, join Pre-Modern Portugal. I'm like in these. I don't.
Yeah. Get in there. If you are running a small European country pre-modern Discord or Facebook page, be sure to invite Michael J. Flores on Facebook or Five with Flores, I think on Discord. It might just be Michael J. What is this? Madman Poet on Discord. Pre-modern's awesome. And, just gonna be a short one, but hey, we're doing this every week and it's awesome. And I'm going to have some tournament content coming soon because I'm just going to play in that, and hopefully I make a deep run with Grow a Mystic Enforcer, or game as we're calling it. And good game. Love Spike Colony.
Love woke Michael J.
Love woke converted Michael J. He will not be keeping gates any longer. Shout out to all the homies. I highly suggest that you listen to the Duress Crew podcast featuring Ian Adams, the champion of the Massachusetts Quarterly. A true, measured, balanced, sort of like nice approach to Goblins. Probably the smartest Goblins talk. I'm not going to say that at the exclusion of other Goblins talk that I've heard, but like the way that he was talking about the deck, I found to be very well informed, very balanced. Taking shots at the blue pilots that think that they're too smart to play the Gobos. And, generally speaking, I agree. I actually play decks of many colors. Do I get frustrated while playing them? Yes. And that's kind of like my personal thing. But, you should get in there and battle with goblins. Stop trying to be clever little boys out there casting your portents. I know that it's kind of a crutch, but you should just keep that hand and hope your deck gives you the goods. That's my
never mulligan, right? That's
no mulligan all the time. Like if your deck doesn't contain portent, you have to mulligan. Like if you open your hand and as an island and a portent, you can keep. But if you don't have portent, then you can mulligan. And don't get me started on Attunement, which is just like 3 mana to give you something that you can just do for free, which is reduce your hand size by 1.
Are we ending the podcast now? This whole thing about actually mulliganing and when you can use mulligans and when you should use mulligans and casting portent, this is all new to me. I thought you should never mulligan. You're going to go down in cards, but we'll never know.
I'll have to teach you. I will give you 1 free day of private coaching on this matter when you hop into our Discord and check out my deep run in the Pre-Modern Online Challenge with Grow a Mystic Enforcer. And you will see how often I do not mulligan hands that contain Portent, and I mulligan all the other ones.
What if you had like a perfect hand? Would you still mulligan it? Even if
Is it a perfect hand if it doesn't contain Portent, right? Because the perfect hand usually has 6 cards, but the 7th card, you don't know what it is until you choose what it is.
I used to keep like every hand, like every unkeepable hand that had a mental note. I'm like, this is definitely going to fix my hand. I remember like Zvi Moshowitz literally once wrote an article just watching me play one game of blue-green. And he got paid $500 to write this article about one game I played. He's just like, Mike apparently keeps this unkeepable hand. He's just like, cast mental note, like, oh, wow, his hand is now perfect. Okay. No, this is how he proceeds to raffle stomp his opponent.
Yeah. I think that my final note on that is that mental note and demonic consultation basically do the same thing. They remove cards from your deck and then give you exactly the card you need after removing some cards from your deck.
Mental note is, I mean, how many times have you just like blocked with a 1/1 werebear and then like cast mental note and then your opponent was blown out? Like,
literal zero. Literal zero. That is one of the most face-up plays that could possibly exist in like a world in which your opponent is blocking with a werebear.
Have you ever blocked with 2 werebears, tapped both of them for green mana, found a blue, cast intuition for 3 mental notes, and mental noted into threshold from 0 cards in your graveyard? Because I've done that.
My only advice is if you're sitting across the table from Michael J. Flores and he's got 2 werebears in play and he appears to be frothing at the mouth, just like don't attack. Like if you can just see the froth overflowing from his mouth, like I would just suggest not attacking. If you're doing this online, just picture your opponent with their threshold, their Mystic Enforcer 3/3 not flying, and you're like, I'm gonna ship my Exalted Angel into the red zone, and you're like, they only have 3 cards in graveyard
for dinner that night, and they went home wearing tusks around their necks decoratively. It was a slaughter. The battlefield became an elephant graveyard. I don't even know what that card does, but I know it's expensive. Because it's from Arabian Nights. Love woke Mike.
love Spike Colony. $266 to tap and regenerate target element. This card needs to be legal in pre-modern.
Wait, $266 to regenerate target elephant?
That is correct.
Does it tap for mana?
Yeah, it makes generic.
Okay. Like, wow. Like, because some of those old lands don't tap for mana.
Yeah, it's no Maze of Ith. It's more similar to a Library of Alexandria in this case.
$266 for generate target element. My opponent would have been happy to have that card in play, I think, right? But man, did the werebears eat the elephants that attack phase? Nom nom nom.
All right.
Nobody ever sees intuition for 3 mental notes. They don't see that line.
The final Love Spike Colony has hit the Twin Towers. Love Spike Colony.
All right. Good luck, Lanny.